revenue from streaming services such as Spotify, Apple Music, and Deezer will surpass that made from CD sales. Do you agree with this statement, and what are your thoughts on why do you think the streaming has become more popular?
I do agree with it, and actually today we're going to look at slides that prove that. It's going to be hard because people are going to be coming in and out. Streaming is easier, it's cheaper, for most people it's free, and I kind of say, why own some songs when you can rent every song? And technology's moving that way. When cars stop having CD players, it'll be complete, that'll end the transition. But yeah, we are going that way and there's no way back.
Why do you think America is one of the biggest international players compared to like the other countries? Because I don't hear a lot of, foreign music except for Spanish music.
You only heard that because of Justin Bieber.
Right, but like, why are we so popular among other countries too?
People say that entertainment is one of our biggest exports. I think that is because, first of all, we have some of the most advanced intellectual property laws, which make it possible for people to make their living off of intellectual property like films and books and songs and music and stuff like that. And I think because when you look at countries that don't protect intellectual property, there's not an incentive for people to create, etc. I also think on the downside, we have a culture that's built around entertainment. We worship our entertainers. We make gods out of them. American Idol was well named as a TV show. And so when you have a culture that worships entertainers, then that becomes, a lot of people become entertainers, not because they're driven to create, but they want to be famous. And you can do that here. So since there's so many rewards to being an entertainer here, I think we draw a lot of entertainment.
What was your understanding of your calling ever like challenged, like for music business?
I don't understand.
Like,
you mentioned in early class that teaching is a calling for you.
Right.
Yeah.
I think she's asking you, well, one, a question that I wanted to ask before was, how did you come to believe that? And then she was asking, has that calling ever been questioned? Like, have you ever wondered, maybe this is
Well, teaching or music business?
Both.
teaching music business?
Nah. I don't ever think I felt called to music business. It was a career I ended up in because I wanted to be a teacher and failed at it. I didn't fail at it. I decided I hated it. And so I left that. I feel like I failed because I didn't want to keep doing something. And I went in the music industry, and 20 years later, one of the reasons I decided to leave was I realized I never meant to have a career in the music industry. I'm good at it. But being good at something in and of itself isn't enough to sustain you. You have to have a passion for it. When I moved into teaching, I really felt like I lined up with something I'm passionate about. I believe not all careers are like this, but I believe that teaching, preaching, speaking, there are certain things that can be a gift of the Holy Spirit. I believe I have a gift of teaching, not necessarily because I'm a great teacher, but because I couldn't teach if it wasn't a gift, because I'm an introvert, a big-time introvert, curl up in the ball, why are you people looking at me? Introvert, and I don't like to be touched. Got that? Huggers out there. Did they get it?
Yeah.
How did you come to believe that that was a calling for you?
It
Or a
actually,
spiritual gift is what you're doing.
I probably started out like a lot of younger people. I loved music, and I loved music so much, and I didn't think I was good enough to be a professional musician. Decided that pretty early, and I didn't know I wanted to, because I'm not the kind of person who would want to travel and be in front of people and perform. And so I think a lot of young people that go into teaching, it's like, I want to be around music. I didn't even know about music business when I was your age. I never even thought of that as a career thing. If you wanted to do music and you didn't want to perform, you taught. And so I think that's where it started, was I know I want to do music. I love music. I'm passionate about it. I don't want to perform it, so I'll teach it. And I learned if you want to teach high school, you can't do it because you love your subject. You have to teach high school because you love your kids,
Yeah, that's
as opposed to loving your subject. You should not try to teach high school because you love your subject, because most of your time you're dealing with kids. Where the calling to teach, or the gifting to teach was confirmed was actually in my church. Judy and I have been in a Sunday school class, a young married Sunday school class, since even before we got married. We started going when we were engaged. And about 2 years in, the teacher of that class said, I want you to teach the class. And I'm like, I don't want to teach this class. I had had a bad experience teaching high school, didn't think I was good at it, didn't like it. And so he's like, no, you're a teacher. And so I got up and started teaching that class, and it's hard to describe what happened, but something happened where there was like, this was me, and when I started teaching, there was more to me than before I taught.
yeah.
And I don't know how to put it in words, but I just know that when I finished teaching, even my wife was like, where did that come from? And I was like, I have no idea. And when I make a joke, sometimes I'll say something, and sometimes, most of the time I am joking, but I'm like, could someone please write that down because I'll forget I said that. When I do that, that's not me. That's like something else happens. I don't know if it's the Holy Spirit or if there is a gifting that actually pulls from places in my mind I don't even know and synthesizes it and turns it into a statement that I've not thought of. But I regularly say things when I'm teaching that I have never thought through or expressed before. And there's just little signs along the way that make me go, okay, there is a calling, there's a giftedness, this is something I'm supposed to do.
Do you guys feel like we have the calling questions covered?
Yeah.
Gonna move into career scholarship and research. Anyone have them?
Does anybody else have their article they have to ask about?
I have that, but I just want to make sure that.
And you guys can email me the article question. If we don't get to everybody's article question, email me that one and I can answer that one by email. I know you're not supposed to do them by email, but one question out of the group. We just can't do everybody's individual articles while we have the group. For those that are not doing a LEAP interview, I apologize. We won't do it for forever, but we still have some time. So why don't we stay with the questions that everybody has to ask rather than getting into people's individual questions.
Okay, one of them it says, when you have a chance, what do you like to read in your discipline or field?
I read everything. My goal is 50 books a year. Last year I did 70. The highest I've ever done is 110.
That's amazing.
Now, to be fair, about half of those are audiobooks because I have a long commute and I listen to the audiobooks. And so someone complained, they were like, you can't say you read a book if you listen to it. And I'm like, all right, I consumed the book. But I don't know why, but I just absorb. And some of that's fiction, some of it's history, some of it is theology, some of it, I've always got a business book, a theology book, pop fiction, like a John Grisham book or something like that, and then literature. So I've always got 4 books I'm reading in different stages because I get bored and I'll bounce from one to the other. In my field, I read constantly. There's not a lot of great work being done in music business, so I am a student of business itself. And I had to do that because my degree was music ed, and I found myself in a business world, and so I had to read constantly trying to make up for what I felt like I didn't know.
Who's someone in the music industry that you admire and why?
I've had several mentors. One of them was a guy named Jim Van Hook who gave me my first job in the music industry. And I really feel like he took a chance on me because I had a music ed degree. And he brought me on early. It was a small company. And he made me, within a year of being there, I can't remember, I think it was manager of special sales, which basically meant I worked directly for him on projects that he came up with. He was a marketer. And he was like, all right, we sell our music in this. Let's see if we can sell our music in this. And I drive off to Gatlinburg with, CD or cassettes in the back of my car and little displays and cold call stores and ask them to carry our stuff. So he invested heavily in me. I remember I had to have back surgery fairly early in my career. I had back surgery very young. And he said, I knew it was going to take 6 weeks and I didn't have that much vacation time. He said, I'm going to keep you on the payroll while you're recovering from surgery, and you're going to read these books, and we're going to talk about them when you're done. So, I mean, I think you guys feel this way too. There's nobody you admire more than someone who's willing to invest in you. And then my current boss in the music industry is a guy named Terry Hemmings. And because I came from a marketing background, Terry taught me to love artists and music. And Terry's the first guy I ever worked for that said, we're not doing this record because it'll sell, we're doing this record because we should do this record, because it's going to be a great record. And we don't get to say that as often these days, but it was an inspiring thing to have the pressure of this has to be a huge commercial success. We did this record because it needed to be made. And that gave me a different inspiration and a different type of nurturing. What else y'all got? I can do this all day. Actually, I can't. Believe it or not, actually talking about myself instead of pretending to talk about myself is much harder.
What are some of the hot or current topics, like in the discipline?
Obviously, how are we going to make money? In fact, it's ironic that y'all are asking these questions today, because the whole thing today is to show from 2004 to today what's happened to the music industry and where is the money gone. I mean, obviously the hot topics are how can we move people into subscription? We've given up on saving the CD or downloads. Now it's like, can we get people from free into subscription streaming services? And do we have enough streaming services? We need competition and stuff. So those are on the record label side, those are the two biggest issues is, can we move our consumers over, and can we support multiple companies so that we end up with a competitive environment, because we don't want to create a monopoly for Spotify. I'm answering these as a music business guy more than I am as the teacher of the class, because that's more interesting.
Does anyone have anything else? I have one more calling question.
Were you guys supposed to be talking to a faculty member, or was it just anybody? Oh, great. That works then. What was yours?
What are helpful questions? Wait, no. How did your perception of yourself impact your career decisions? It's more an emotional one.
Yeah. Early on, and I don't know where this came from, I've always been very independent. I was that person, like, I auditioned when I was 15 for the school play, and the school play had a bad word in it. And it wasn't necessarily that I felt like people that said bad words were bad people. I didn't see the need for 15-year-olds to be in a play that had profanity in it. And I told the teacher that. And I said, I'm not doing it. She goes, well, that's just, we need it to be real. I'm like, how real does it need to be? We're 15. I said, I'm not going to do it. And I don't know where that came from, but I've always been that way. And so in business, I always had the mentality, I am being paid to be me. They're not paying me to be somebody else. And if being me isn't enough, they need to hire somebody else. And I think that part of my success has come from that independence of, I'm going to think for myself, I'm going to be myself. That doesn't mean be stubborn and not be teachable, but to be the best version of me all the time and not try to be what I thought somebody wanted. And because of that and that orientation, I've always been good at making decisions. And I will say the biggest weakness, the fastest way to promotion is to be somebody who will make decisions and take ownership of your decisions, whether they're good or bad. Most people will not make decisions. They want their decisions to be backed by somebody else, so if it's the wrong decision, they don't have to feel like they are the ones that made it.
So true.
And I would say the number one skill I had that got me had nothing to do with marketing, or it was I can make decisions, and I can make decisions fast. And if I found out I'm wrong, I find out as fast as possible, and I change my mind. Some people will make a decision and feel like they got to die on that decision because they don't want to admit they were wrong. I'm like, I'm wrong most of the time. Most people are. It's like if you bet against a baseball player, the best baseball player in the world, on whether they'll get a hit or not, you will win. Because the best baseball player in the world has probably somewhere between 300, 400 batting average, meaning they are going to miss most of the time. Same things with making decisions. You're going to make a lot more wrong decisions than you are right decisions. And if making a wrong decision scares you, you're in trouble. So not just being bold enough to make decisions, but being bold enough to know most of your decisions are going to be wrong, and you're going to have to know quickly and change your mind. Someone's like, but you were so sure. I'm like, yeah, and now I'm sure I was wrong. So I guess that's
Good.
part of it.
What's a project that you worked on in the past or now that you enjoyed the most, and why, or what made it so enjoyable?
Enjoyable versus proud would be two different issues. I'm very proud of the Casting Crowns album because most labels decided not to work with them. They thought it sounded dated and old, and they didn't think the band looked cool enough. And they've ended up being the biggest selling Christian band in history. And we just listened to the songs and went, we got to do this. These songs are amazing. And then we met Mark. It's like, this guy's the real deal. So I'm very proud of that. I'd love to say it was enjoyable. There are a lot of aspects where it wasn't enjoyable because there's 7 of them. And he didn't want to quit his day job. He stayed on as a youth pastor. And working with them is incredibly difficult because they break all the rules. The project I'm most proud of was I did a live video and CD on an artist named Larnell Harris, who most of y'all haven't heard of. He was a big inspirational singer in the 80s. You would know some of his songs, or your parents or your grandparents would definitely know who he was because he was like one of the greatest Christian singers of all times as far as like just ability, almost an operatic, kind of like a Josh Groban from the 80s. Well, I looked back in about 2010, my wife and I, she was discovering YouTube. She was looking up all of her favorite artists. And one of them was Sandy Patty, and she was finding all these Sandy Patty videos. And Steve Green, these Steve Green videos. She went to look for Larnell Harris, I've Just Seen Jesus, which is one of her favorite songs, and couldn't find it. In fact, we couldn't find any high quality live recordings of this guy, who I think is one of the greatest singers our industry's ever had. And so I raised money, and we went in and we did a live DVD and CD on Larnell, knowing that we would never get our money back. Simply because this guy, he's in his 70s now, and he still sings great, but I'm like, how much longer is he going to be able to do this? We need to get this guy on video so that it's preserved. So I'm incredibly proud of that project and how it came out. Because one of the things you'll find if you work in the music industry, you begin to question your motives, particularly if it's Christian music. You always feel a little icky that you're doing these things that have this spiritual impact, but you're doing it in order to make money. And so doing something that came from that kind of a pure place just kind of felt good for my soul. I'm giving you really long answers. It's a good thing you're recording. You can get that down to, you like this Larnell Harris thing. It was cool. Yeah, just get it down to that. Was that it? All right, if we didn't get to do your individual questions about your article, email me those questions and I'll shoot you that answer back separately.